Commander Vrax of the Hegemony's 7th Armada straightened his exoskeleton and stared down at the pathetic blue planet through the viewport. His mandibles clicked in anticipation. Another conquest. Another species to add to the glorious collection. The humans would make excellent labor units, once properly subdued. Status report. He barked, his voice echoing across the command bridge. Lieutenant Glaxer rushed forward, nearly tripping over his own appendages. Sir. Scans complete on the primitive defense systems of Earth. Their military capabilities are, well, laughable. Explain, Vrax demanded, 8 eyes blinking in sequence. The species calls themselves humans. They've barely achieved rudimentary space travel. Their weapons are primarily projectile-based, using chemical propellants to launch metal objects. Can you believe it? They throw small pieces of metal at each other. Glaxer couldn't contain his chortle, which sounded like a dying vacuum cleaner. Vrax flicked his antenna dismissively. Backwards primitives. What about their most advanced systems? Some directed energy weapons, but nothing that could penetrate our 7th-generation shields. Their orbital defenses are negligible. We could conquer this rock with a single battalion. General Drenka, the most decorated warrior in the fleet, stepped forward. Unlike the others, her carapace bore the scars of 100 campaigns. Commander, request permission to lead the ground assault personally. My troops need the exercise. Denied, Vrax said, savoring the disappointment in Drenka's compound eyes. This is beneath you, General. Send Colonel Zax with the 13th Division. They've been complaining about lack of combat experience. As you wish, Drenka replied, mandibles twitching irritably. Vrax turned back to the viewport, where Earth hung like a blue marble in the darkness. Prepare the standard intimidation broadcast. Let's see if these humans have the sense to surrender without bloodshed. Down on Earth, Major Audrey Patel of the United Global Defense Force stared at the alien message playing across every screen on the planet. Attention, primitive species. We are the hegemony, rulers of 7 galaxies. Your resistance is futile. Your technologies are primitive. Your weapons are obsolete. Surrender now and become productive members of our glorious empire. Resistance will result in significant population reduction. She snorted, which earned her a sideways glance from General Franklin. Something amusing about alien invasion, Major? Major? The general asked, one eyebrow raised. Sorry, sir. It's just significant population reduction. Why not just say we'll kill you all? Bureaucrats are the same across the universe, apparently. The general's lips twitched. Focus, Major. Options? Patel straightened. Sir, conventional weapons will be useless against their technology. Missiles, fighter jets, tanks, all pointless, but I have an idea so crazy it might just work. I'm listening. The aliens clearly have advanced scanning technology. They've analyzed our modern weapons systems and developed countermeasures. But what about weapons they've never encountered? Weapons so old and obsolete they wouldn't even register as threats? The general's eyes narrowed. Go on. The Smithsonian Military History Museum, sir. It's filled with fully functional historical weapons. Echoing, Pluto, Buffenprai. My grandfather was a curator there. The aliens would never scan a museum for threats. You want to fight an advanced alien species with museum pieces? Patel nodded. Excitement building. Specifically the Gatling gun collection, and cranked, original models. No electronics, no modern components, just mechanical ingenuity and a lot of lead, plus some other antiques with unique capabilities. Franklin stared at her for a long moment. That's the most ridiculous plan I've ever heard. He paused. Get your team ready. You leave in 30 minutes. Colonel Zax surveyed the primitive urban landscape through his tactical visor. The local planetary designation for this location was Washington, D.C., apparently some sort of governmental center for the dominant nation-state of this continent. Pathetic, he muttered, watching the local defense forces scramble into position. Their vehicles belched toxic fumes, and their weapons systems were so rudimentary his scanner could barely recognize them as technology. His second-in-command, Major Krill, approached with a jittery salute. "Sir, forward scouts report the locals are establishing defensive positions around several structures. Should we commence bombardment?" "Negative," Zax replied. "Commander Vrax wants minimal structural damage. These buildings will make adequate administrative centers once we've pacified the population. It will proceed with direct ground assault." "The troops are eager, sir. They've been taking bets on how quickly we'll subdue these humans." Zax chuckled, a sound like metal grinding against stone. "What's your wager, Major?" "4 standard cycles, sir. These creatures move so slowly, and they're so soft, no exoskeleton, no natural armor. It's almost unfair." "I give it 2 cycles, maximum," Zax said, extending his blade appendage from its sheath. The monomolecular edge gleamed in the sunlight. "Let's get this over with. I promise to bring my spawn a human specimen for their education chamber." But inside the Smithsonian, Major Patel and her hastily assembled team worked feverishly. The museum staff had been surprisingly cooperative once they'd seen the alien ships hovering over the city. "Dr. Valdez, how's the ammunition situation?" Patel called out. The museum's head conservator looked up from a wooden crate. "We found 3,000 original .58 caliber rounds for the Gatling guns, all perfectly preserved. My team spent years ensuring these artifacts remained functional for educational demonstrations." "Well, today they're getting an educational demonstration nobody planned for," Patel replied. Lieutenant Omar Torres wheeled in a massive contraption of brass and iron. "Found another one, Major. Model 1862, fully operational. That makes 6 guns total." Patel ran her hand along the weapon's brass fittings. "Beautiful. My grandfather let me crank one of these during a private tour when I was 12. Never thought I'd actually fire one in combat." Torres looked skeptical. "With all due respect, Major, these things fire at what, 200 rounds per minute? The aliens have energy shields and advanced armor." "True," Patel conceded. "But they've calibrated those defenses against modern threats: lasers, high explosive shells, depleted uranium. Not simple lead balls traveling at relatively low velocities. Sometimes the most primitive solution is the one your enemy least expects." Curator Dr. Eleanor Ray approached with a leather-bound book. "Major, I've found the original operation manuals. The ideal crew is 4 personnel per gun, 1 to crank, 1 to feed ammunition, 1 to aim, and 1 to clear jams." "We'll have to make do with 2 per gun," Patel said. "Torres, get these weapons positioned at the north entrance. Dr. Ray, we need those 1855 Springfield rifles as backup, and someone find me General Custer's revolvers." "You can't use those," Dr. Valdez protested. "They're priceless historical artifacts." Patel fixed him with a stern look. "If we lose this battle, Doctor, human history itself becomes an artifact. I think General Custer would approve of his weapons being used for humanity's last stand." From his hovering command platform, Colonel Zax watched his troops advance toward the primitive structure. His soldiers moved with perfect precision, their biomechanical limbs in perfect synchronization. "Sir," Major Krill reported, "our scanners detect minimal electronic signatures from that structure. Some primitive communication devices, lighting systems, and climate control. No energy weapons detected." "As expected," Zax replied. "This species relies on chemical propellants and kinetic energy weapons, primitive technology from a primitive species. Should we issue a final surrender demand?" Zax's mandibles clicked in irritation. Why waste the time? These creatures need to learn their place in the universe. Commence the assault. The first wave of hegemony troops approached the museum steps. Their armor gleamed in the sunlight, an iridescent purple-black that absorbed most energy signatures. Each soldier stood 3 meters tall, with 4 arms and dual optical systems allowing simultaneous normal and infrared vision. "Look at them scurrying around inside," Krill said, his voice dripping with contempt, "like vermin realizing their nest has been discovered." "Pathetic," Zax agreed. All units, prepare to breach on my mark. Standard subjugation protocols. Remember, we need specimens in good condition. They're coming. Torres hissed, peering through a window. At least 50 of them in the first wave. Patel nodded grimly. Remember the plan. Let them get inside the rotunda before we open fire. We need them contained. She turned to the nervous museum staff who had volunteered to help. Once we start firing, crank those handles like your lives depend on it, because they do. Dr. Ray looked pale but determined behind her Gatling gun. My great-great-grandfather fought at Gettysburg with weapons like these. Never thought I'd follow in his footsteps. History has a way of repeating itself, Patel replied, though I doubt he faced 8-foot-tall alien invaders. Actually, Ray managed a weak smile. Family legend says he was 6'4", which was practically alien in 1863. A thunderous boom echoed through the building as the main doors were breached. The alien troops poured in, their movements eerily fluid and precise. Hold, Patel whispered into her radio. Hold. The aliens spread out into the rotunda, their weapons raised. They seemed almost casual, expecting minimal resistance. Colonel Zack stepped through the doorway, his sensor array scanning the primitive artwork and display cases with mild interest. Secure the area, he ordered. These artifacts might have scientific value. Now, Patel screamed. The museum erupted in noise and smoke as 6 Gatling guns opened fire simultaneously. The heavy lead balls tore through the air at velocities much lower than modern bullets, but fast enough to become deadly projectiles. The aliens reacted with shock as the primitive weapons unleashed a storm of metal. Their shields, designed to deflect high-energy plasma and disperse the kinetic energy of modern firearms, struggled to adapt to the unusual threat. What is happening? Zack screamed as his troops began to fall. These are not registered weapons. Patel cranked her Gatling gun furiously, the ancient mechanism clacking and whirring as it spat death at rates that had amazed Civil War generals. Welcome to Earth, you overdeveloped cockroaches, she shouted. Though the aliens couldn't understand her, the rotunda became a killing floor. The alien shields flickered and failed against the barrage of lead balls. Their armor, designed to disperse energy weapon impacts, was being penetrated by simple kinetic force concentrated in small areas. Impossible. Major Krill gasped as a lead ball punched through his thoracic plate. Their weapons are antiques. Colonel Zack scrambled for cover, his mind racing. How could this be happening? These humans were using technology from their own historical archives against the most advanced fighting force in 7 galaxies, and they were winning. Fall back, he ordered. Tactical retreat, we need to recalibrate our defenses. As the surviving aliens scrambled toward the exit, Patel grabbed a weapon case from the wall, breaking the glass with her elbow. Inside lay 2 ornate revolvers once carried by General George Armstrong Custer. Sorry about this, General, she muttered, loading the antique weapons with period-appropriate ammunition. Then she took aim at the retreating Colonel Zax and pulled both triggers. The alien commander screamed as 19th-century lead tore through his command neural cluster. He collapsed on the museum steps, green fluid pooling beneath his twitching form. In orbit, Commander Vrax received the emergency transmission with disbelief. What do you mean defeated by primitive weapons? That's impossible. The garbled response sent chills through his exoskeleton. They using weapons not in our database, projectiles our shields cannot, massive casualties, requesting immediate extraction. Vrax stared at the blue planet with newfound respect and a twinge of fear. Perhaps this conquest would not be as simple as they had assumed. On the museum steps, Major Patel stood over the fallen alien commander, Custer's revolver still smoking in her hands. "Welcome to Earth," she said quietly. "History lessons just getting started." Commander Vrax paced the bridge of his flagship, his claws leaving tiny scratches on the polished obsidian floor. The tactical hologram showed a disaster unfolding, Colonel Zax dead. The 13th Division decimated by museum pieces. The humiliation was unbearable. "Play the combat footage again," he ordered, voice tight with rage. Lieutenant Glaxer hesitated. "Sir, you've watched it 17 times already." Again. The hologram flickered to life, showing the museum battle from multiple angles. The humans, so fragile in appearance, operating their primitive hand-cranked weapons with unexpected efficiency. The antiquated lead projectiles tearing through his troops' advanced defenses like they weren't even there. "Magnify Sector 4, Vrax commanded. The image zoomed in on a human female, presumably their commander, wielding 2 small hand weapons. The determination in her alien face was unmistakable as she fired point-blank into Colonel Zax's neural cluster. General Drenka stood silent, studying the footage with professional interest. "Fascinating adaptation," she finally said. "They identified a vulnerability and exploited it immediately. These humans are more resourceful than our intelligence suggested." Vrax's mandibles clacked angrily. "They got lucky. Our defensive systems are calibrated for modern threats, energy weapons, smart projectiles, nano-ordnance. Not obsolete technology so primitive we didn't consider it a threat." Drenka finished. "A mistake we won't make twice." Vrax turned all 8 eyes toward her. "What do you propose?" "General, allow me to lead the next assault personally, a full regiment, not just a division. And this time, we recalibrate our shields to stop even the most primitive projectiles." "And the human commander? The female who killed Zax?" Drenka's mandibles formed what passed for a smile in her species. "I will deal with her personally. It seems she appreciates antiques. I have some ancient weapons of my own I'd like to introduce her to." Major Patel didn't have time to celebrate their victory. The museum had become a fortress, but everyone knew the aliens would return with overwhelming force. "Status report," she barked, moving between defensive positions where her team was reinforcing windows and doorways. Torres looked up from his tablet. "Global Defense Force reports similar successful engagements worldwide. The aliens weren't prepared for pre-industrial weaponry. They've retreated to low orbit to regroup." "Tolling. How much time do we have?" "Intelligence estimates 4 hours. Maximum." Patel nodded grimly. "Then we better find more antiques." Dr. Ray approached, excitement visible despite her exhaustion. "Major, you need to see the Naval History section now." They jogged through abandoned galleries filled with priceless artifacts from human history. In any other circumstance, Patel would have been awestruck. Now, she saw only potential weapons. The Naval History Wing opened into a cavernous space dominated by massive models of historical ships. Dr. Ray led her to a glass case containing what looked like primitive explosives. "Naval mines," Ray explained. "Civil War era, filled with black powder. Completely mechanical trigger mechanisms." Patel's eyes widened. They'd never detect these as weapons. Their sensors would register them as simple metal and chemical compounds. "Exactly. And we have 30 of them." "Doctor, I could kiss you right now." Ray blushed. "Maybe after we save the world, Major." Torres rushed in, breathless. "Major, the aliens have deployed some kind of jamming field. All electronics within a 5-mile radius are dead." Patel smiled. "Good thing we're not relying on electronics." In his orbiting command center, Commander Vrax watched the second invasion force deploy. This time there would be no mistakes. No underestimating these humans. General Drenka's drop ships have entered the atmosphere, Glaxer reported. "Electronic countermeasures deployed and functioning at optimal levels." "Excellent," Vrax purred. "No more surprises from these primitive creatures." A junior officer approached nervously. "Commander, we're detecting unusual movement in the planet's oceans. Large metal vessels leaving their ports." "Their naval forces. Trying to evacuate their leadership, no doubt." "No, sir. These vessels appear to be outdated. Wooden structures with primitive propulsion systems, her sensors barely registered them as technology. Vrax's blood ran cold. What? Show me. The hologram shifted to display Earth's oceans. True enough, dozens of vessels were putting to sea, but not modern warships. These were relics from another age, tall wooden ships with billowing fabric propulsion systems. If impossible. Why would they? Vrax's voice trailed off as realization dawned. No. No. General Drenka must be warned immediately. The second wave of alien troops was far more cautious approaching the museum. They moved in tight formation, weapons charged, scanning constantly for threats. General Drenka led from the front, her battle armor gleaming. Unlike her troops, she carried a ceremonial weapon, a vibro-glaive passed down through generations of her bloodline. It had tasted the blood of 100 species. Today, it would taste human. Spread out, she commanded. Teams of 6, check every shadow, every corner. These humans are cunning. Her troops moved with practiced precision into the museum grounds. The building stood silent, showing scars from the previous battle but offering no immediate resistance. Suspiciously quiet, her lieutenant noted. Indeed, Drenka agreed. Thermal scans? Inconclusive. The structure contains too many materials that absorb or reflect heat signatures. Drenka considered her options. The humans had demonstrated remarkable adaptability. What would they try next? Forward scouts report. Silence. Chess. Forward scouts. Acknowledge. Nothing. Die. Drenka signaled her personal guard. You're with me. The rest hold position. She advanced cautiously toward the museum entrance. The massive doors hung open, revealing darkness beyond. The bodies of fallen comrades from the first assault had been removed. Just before the threshold, her boot clinked against something metallic. She looked down to see a thin wire stretched across the entrance. Primitive trap, she scoffed, stepping over it carefully. The explosion that followed threw her 15 meters backward. Her armor absorbed most of the blast, but the psychological impact was far greater. These humans were using explosives triggered by simple pressure and trip wires, technology so basic it didn't even register on their defense scans. As Drenka struggled to her feet, the museum erupted in a symphony of destruction. Hidden firing ports opened in walls and ceilings. The clatter of hand-cranked Gatling guns filled the air. But this time, there were new sounds, the deep boom of muzzle-loading cannons, the crack of flintlock rifles. Shields to maximum. Drenka screamed over the chaos. Her troops' shields flared bright blue as they recalibrated to stop the primitive projectiles. For a moment, it seemed to work. The lead balls bounced harmlessly off the energy barriers. Then something new joined the battle. From concealed positions, humans fired strange weapons that launched harpoons, simple metal spears attached to ropes. These two bounced off the alien shields. But the ropes remained, tangling around limbs and weapons. Cut yourselves free. Drenka ordered, slicing through a rope with her vibro-glaive. But the humans had anticipated this. The ropes were merely the first stage. As the aliens struggled against their entanglement, figures in smoke-blackened uniforms rushed forward, carrying what looked like metal pots on long poles. What are they doing? Drenka's lieutenant asked. His question was answered when the humans thrust the devices against the aliens' shield perimeters. The shield stopped the metal containers, but not their contents, boiling oil that poured through the energy barrier and onto the troops beneath. Screams filled the comm channel as the scorching liquid found gaps in the aliens' armor. Drenka watched in horror as her elite forces fell victim to a weapon technology that predated electricity on this world. Fall back, she ordered. Regroup outside the perimeter. As her forces retreated, Drenka spotted a human female watching from a balcony above, the same commander who had killed Colonel Zax. Their eyes met across the battlefield, a moment of mutual recognition and respect between warriors. The human raised a primitive projectile weapon and fired. Drenka's shield caught the projectile easily, but something was wrong. The lead ball had a strange device attached to it, a glass vial that shattered on impact with her shield. The liquid inside was simple water, but floating in that water were tiny metal filings that passed through her shield as if it weren't there. Dozens of microscopic metal fragments penetrated her armor, finding their way to vulnerable flesh beneath. Pain flared across Drenka's thorax. Bex, she staggered, then straightened. She was a general of the hegemony. She would not fall to primitive weapons. Another shot rang out. Another vial shattered. More metal fragments passed through her supposedly impenetrable defenses. The human commander was descending the stairs now, reloading her weapon as she approached. Drenka raised her vibro-glaive, preparing for close combat. "I've studied your weapons," the human said, surprisingly calm. "Your vibro-glaive operates on a frequency that molecularly disrupts whatever it touches. Impressive technology." Drenka hissed. "Then you know you cannot stop it with your antiques." The human shrugged. "Maybe not. But I bet it struggles with certain materials." She drew something from behind her back, a sword with a wooden handle and a blade made of whale bone. "From our maritime collection," the human explained. "Scrimshaw's sword made by whalers in the 1800s. No metal for your blade to disrupt." Despite herself, Drenka was impressed. These humans adapted quickly. "You would face me in single combat?" Brave, but foolish. The human smiled. "Who said anything about single combat?" Too late. Drenka realized she'd been lured into a trap. Something heavy crashed down from above, a massive fishing net weighted with stone and metal, entangling her completely. "Another museum piece," the human said, approaching cautiously. "Fishing net from ancient Greece. Over 2,000 years old." Drenka struggled against the primitive restraint. "You think this can hold me?" "Not for long. But long enough." The human commander raised a small black box to her lips. "All units, fire." The museum's dome retracted, revealing the sky, and a dozen vintage naval cannons positioned on the roof. They fired in unison, not at Drenka, but at the alien drop ships hovering above. Cast iron balls, technology unchanged since the 1700s, smashed into the alien vessels. Their shields, recalibrated to stop modern threats and primitive bullets, hadn't been adjusted for projectiles of this mass and velocity. Drenka watched in horror as her command ship listed sideways, smoke pouring from a massive breach in its hull. The humans had adapted faster than anyone could have predicted. In orbit, Commander Vrax received the emergency transmissions with increasing despair. "General Drenka captured. The assault force decimated by prehistoric weapons." The tactical officer couldn't meet his commander's eyes. "Sir, the humans are deploying these antiquated weapons globally. Our forces are taking heavy casualties everywhere they engage." "What about our naval blockade?" "Sir, the humans have deployed wooden sailing vessels armed with primitive but effective weaponry. Our ships can't target them properly. Their materials and propulsion methods don't register on our automated systems." Vrax's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of extreme stress. "How? How? We've conquered 7 galaxies. We've subjugated species with technology far beyond these humans." "Perhaps that's precisely why we're failing, sir," his tactical officer suggested quietly. "We've only ever fought enemies who tried to match our technology. These humans are the first to fight us with their past rather than their present." A communication alert blinked on the main console. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the planet's surface. It's General Drenka." The screen flickered to life. Drenka appeared, seated in what looked like a primitive museum display. Behind her stood the human female commander and several others. "Commander Vrax," Drenka said, her voice steady despite her obvious injuries. "The humans wish to negotiate terms." "Terms? We do not negotiate with primitive species." The human female stepped forward. "Commander, My name is Major Audrey Patel of Earth's Global Defense Force. Let me be clear. We've captured your general, destroyed half your ground forces, and damaged multiple ships using technology you considered obsolete. Imagine what we could do if we actually used our modern weapons. Vrax's antennae twitched in agitation. You would not survive orbital bombardment. Probably not, Patel agreed. But we've uploaded detailed schematics of your ship's vulnerabilities to every nation on Earth. Even if you glass the planet, thousands of our primitive wooden ships are already at sea, carrying enough antiquated weaponry to ensure mutual destruction. Your surviving vessels would never make it home. Vrax started to protest, but Drenka cut him off. She speaks the truth, Commander. I've seen their capabilities firsthand. These humans understand asymmetric warfare better than any species we've encountered. They've turned their own technological inferiority into a weapon against us. Patel leaned closer to the camera. Here are our terms. You will release all human prisoners. You will withdraw all forces from our solar system base, and you will register Earth as a protected planet under whatever interstellar laws you recognize. And why would we agree to these outrageous demands? Because, Patel said, smile widening, we're not just sending you home with your tails between your legs. We're sending you home with General Drenka and a selection of our antique weapons as gifts for your leaders. Drenka nodded. I have advised the humans that this would be seen as a gesture of respect. They are not seeking annihilation, Commander, merely recognition. Vrax's mind raced, calculating possibilities. The hegemony had never retreated, never acknowledged defeat, but they had also never encountered a species that fought quite like these humans. And if I refuse? Patel's expression hardened. Then we start using our modern weapons too. We've analyzed your technology during these engagements. We know your weaknesses now. Silence fell across the bridge. Every alien officer waited for Vrax's decision to accept humiliation or risk complete destruction over a single, insignificant planet. Very well, he finally said. Withdrawal orders will be issued immediately. But know this, human. The hegemony has a long memory. Patel nodded. So do we, Commander. So do we. 3 solar cycles later, in the grand archive of the hegemony's capital world, General Drenka stood before the assembled high command. Her injuries had healed, but she would forever bear the scars of Earth. And so, she concluded her report, I recommend that Earth be classified as a Class 5 hazardous world, unsuitable for standard conquest protocols. Supreme Overlord Kazik's feeding tentacles writhed with agitation. This is unprecedented. Defeated by museum pieces, by weapons their own species had discarded as obsolete. With respect, Supreme One, that is precisely what makes them dangerous, Drenka replied. Most species we conquer try to match our technology and fail. The humans instead used what we considered primitive to exploit gaps in our defenses. They combined ancient ingenuity with modern tactical thinking. She gestured to the display case beside her, containing examples of the human weapons that had caused so much damage. The assembled commanders murmured at the crude construction, the simple mechanisms. But these are so basic, one admiral protested. Indeed, Drenka agreed. Their power lies not in their sophistication but in their simplicity. They require no power sources, no complex targeting systems, no quantum calculations. They simply work. And you believe these humans pose a genuine threat to the hegemony? Kazik demanded. No, Supreme One. Not yet. But given time, they adapt faster than any species I've encountered. They learn from defeat. They improvise with whatever tools are available. Today they repelled us with their past. Imagine what they might achieve with their future. The Supreme Overlord considered this. We shall watch them then. From a distance. Perhaps in time they will destroy themselves, as so many young species do. Drenka touched the scar tissue where Patel's metal fragments had penetrated her armor, perhaps. But I would not wager on it. Back on Earth, Major Patel stood in the restored rotunda of the Smithsonian. The museum had been rebuilt, the battle damage repaired. But now it housed a new exhibit, humanity's first interstellar victory. Dr. Ray joined her, gazing at the display of Gatling guns and naval mines alongside recovered pieces of alien technology. "Do you think they'll come back?" Ray asked. "Eventually," Patel replied. "But they'll think twice about underestimating us again." "The world's changing," Ray said. "New weapons being developed based on what we learned from their technology, military doctrines evolving. We'll be ready next time." Patel nodded, but her attention was drawn to a small display case. Inside lay two antique revolvers, General Custer's prized possessions, now national treasures. "You know what I find most ironic?" she said softly. "Throughout our history, we've always feared being destroyed by our most advanced weapons, nuclear missiles, biological agents, killer drones. None of us ever imagined we'd be saved by our most primitive ones." Ray smiled. "There's probably a lesson in that." "Several," Patel agreed, turning away from the exhibit. "But the most important one is this: never bring advanced shields to an antique gunfight." As they walked away, neither noticed the small alien drone disguised as an Earth insect, recording everything for transmission to a distant monitoring station. The hegemony was watching, learning, adapting, and somewhere in deep space, Commander Vrax Steele stared at the reports from that monitoring drone, mandibles clicking thoughtfully. Next time they would be prepared for human ingenuity. Next time they would not underestimate these dangerous primitives and their unpredictable ways. Next time, but for now, the commander had to admit a grudging respect for Major Patel and her antique weapons. The Gatling gun had indeed shattered his troops, and perhaps in some small way his species' sense of superiority. "Fascinating creatures," he murmured to the empty room. "Absolutely fascinating."